Hello guys, and welcome to this short tutorial. And in this video I'm going to teach you how to deploy a MERN stack application. And MERN stands for MongoDB, Express.js, React.js, and Node.js. Now when it comes to MERN stack applications, there are basically two sides. There is a server side, that is the Node Express API that you usually connect to a MongoDB database, and there is the React side, which is the front-end side or the client side. So basically the idea is to deploy the backend or the server side separately, and then you deploy the client side or the React application separately. Okay, so for the React application in this video, we are actually going to use Hostinger to deploy the React application, which is going to give us a free domain name, SSL, and some cool stuff. And for the API side, that's the server side, we are actually going to use render. And we are going to use the continuous deployment for the API side. So whenever we make any changes at the server side or the API side, we can just push it to GitHub and our API is going to be automatically updated online. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let me quickly walk you through the project locally and then we'll go on to deploy it. So this is the project that we are going to deploy. I created this project with my students, so I have a full tutorial on both the client side, that is the React, and on the Node Express API as well, that is the server side. Right, let's go ahead and actually open this whole project in VS Code. If you check out the folders, you can see that we do not have our Node modules. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and install our dependencies in both folders. So I'm actually going to open multiple terminals here. I'm going to call this server just so you see what's happening. Let me actually make this bigger. The first one, or the one at the top, is going to be client. Right, so in the server terminal, we have to cd into our server folder, and we are going to do npm install. Okay, and some dependencies can be stubborn, and so I'm going to do force and then save. Okay, just so we have everything installed. All right, so this will go ahead and install all the dependencies that we have in the server side right here. So if you check out package.json, you can see we have quite a few dependencies. Okay, so those will all be installed, and once they are installed, make sure you have .gitignore right here, and make sure you have this /node modules. Okay, just so you don't push it to your repository. Okay, so that is for the server side. Now let's go into our client side as well, and so let's cd into client and do npm install here as well. I'll do force and save. Right, so let's install the dependencies here in the client side. As you can see, our node modules folder just popped up here. To make sure you have .gitignore, and then make sure you have the node modules in there. You know what, let's go ahead and actually create a repository here on GitHub. So let's go to GitHub, and I'm going to create a new repo. Let's just create new here. I'll actually make this private. I'll call this voting app deployment. Right, and I'll just go ahead and create. All right, so once that is done, I can go ahead, and as you can see, the dependencies for the client side is also done. And so here in the main project folder, I'll go ahead and do git init. I'll go ahead and add everything. Right, now let's commit. I'll say initial commit. All right, now that is done, let's go ahead and actually push it to the repository we just created on GitHub. So I'll just paste this and then hit enter. Okay, this should take a few seconds. All right, now that is it. Once we come back to the repo we just created on GitHub and refresh, we should actually have our client and server side. Perfect. Okay, now let's go ahead and deploy the backend first. That is the server side. And notice that we have quite a few environment variables here on the server side. Okay, so we have a port. That is the port the server is actually running on, as you can see here. We connect to MongoDB and then we listen to that port. Okay, and when we come back to the .env, you can see that we have some more environment variables here. We have 3 for Cloudinary. We have the cloud name, Cloudinary API key, and we have the secrets as well. So in the app, we are actually uploading images to Cloudinary, okay, for storage, and then Cloudinary will give us a URL for those images. And of course, we can go ahead and actually watch the tutorials how we did all these. And we have JWT, that's JSON Web Token secret here as well. And then we have MongoDB URL. Okay, so there's the URL for our MongoDB cluster. Basically, we should have all these environment variables for the application to actually run. Okay, so once we have these, I should actually go ahead and start up the application just so you see that it is actually working locally. Okay, so I'll do npm run dev for the server side. Okay, so we should get server started on port 5000, and for the client side I'll just do npm start to start the React application, and that should also start. All right, so there's the app, and I'm not going to show you the entire demo, of course, but I'll just go ahead and log in as the admin in the application. And of course, we can go ahead and add an election. I'll say Harvard presidential elections 2024. I'll add something for the description. I'll go ahead and choose a thumbnail. Anything works. I'll just add the selection, and boom, that election should be added, of course. And we can go ahead, add candidates. So this image is being saved in Cloudinary, okay, and we keep a backup in the app as well, but that's just by the way. You can go ahead, add candidates. Let's say you can add a candidate, and for the candidate image, come on, I'll just go ahead and choose an image here. Okay, so we'll have a candidate in a second, and there he is. We have a candidate for the election, and of course I can go ahead and actually change the thumbnail to the Harvard badge or the Harvard flag, and now there's actually here. Okay, so we can go ahead and actually vote. Anyone who signs up can go ahead and vote. Okay, of course, right now we have only one candidate, so he's going to get 100% of the entire vote since it's only one person that has voted. If I try to vote again, I cannot vote because I have already voted, okay, in this particular election. Of course, I'm not going to go ahead and walk you through the entire project, but I just wanted to show you that it is actually working. Okay, so we have our project here on GitHub, and we can see that it is actually working. So we can go ahead and actually deploy our project. Okay, starting with the backend. So let's go to render.com, and I'll go ahead and go to the dashboard. Of course, you should log in. It's better for you to log in with GitHub, okay, since we are going to do continuous deployment. So let's go ahead and create our first project. Routine app. And let's create a service. Since we are trying to deploy the backend, that is the Node Express API, we are going to go ahead and choose web services. And now we are going to go ahead and select the repository that backend project can be found. All right, so that can be found in the repository we just created, that is voting app deployment. So I'll just choose that and then connect. We are deploying the backend, so you can just add backend here or server if that's what you want. And I can just call this server, okay? And that will actually be in the server folder, right here. This is the folder that we are looking for. We are currently in the voting app deployment, but we want to deploy this server, okay? And that is the Node Express API that we want to deploy. So I'll do /server, okay? And here the build command would be npm install, and the start command is going to be node index.js. Okay, so let's come back to the project and I'm going to show you something real quick. If we check out the package.json that is inside of the server folder, so we have one for the development, that is npm run dev, and so we are going to go ahead and have one for production, that will be start, okay? And so that will be node index.js, since index.js is our starting file right here, okay? And that is where we are actually starting up our server. All right, so make sure you have start and then node index.js in your package.json file. All right, so make sure you have that here as well for the start command. And of course we are going to choose free, and here is where we are going to go ahead and upload our environment variables. So let's go ahead and I'm going to copy everything in here in our environment variable, and I'm going to paste it right here. All right, now everything is set. We can go ahead and deploy web service. This should take a few seconds. All right, and as you can see, your service is live. Okay, so our API is actually live, and this is the URL we got for our API. And so let's check that out. All right, so I'll add API and then elections, for instance, and you see unauthorized no token. So we are actually getting something back, although we are not authorized to access the elections, but since we are getting something back, it means everything is working so far. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead, and since we are done with the backend or the API deployment, let's deploy the front end or the client side as well. That is the React application. Now remember that in the backend index.js, in the course, we are actually giving an origin of localhost 3000, meaning we are communicating with this endpoint or with this domain. Okay, and so once we deploy the client side, we should come back and update this. It's either we remove this localhost 3000 or we add another domain to this array. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. And in the front end as well, we should make sure we update this localhost 5000/API. Okay, since we have our API live, we should copy the new API URL and then paste it in here instead of the localhost 5000. Okay, so now we have https server 538r on render.com/API, and remember to add the /API. Okay, all right, so that is all we need to do here in the front end. And once you are done with that, go ahead, open your terminal, and in your front end, let me just close this. We are going to do npm run build our React application is going to be built for deployment or for production. Let's go ahead and set up our hosting and domain name. And having used or having worked with many hosting providers, the one that I always recommend for everyone is Hostinger. Now, in the description of this video, you are going to find a link that's probably the first link that's going to bring you to this page. And that's an affiliate link that's going to give you the best deal for your hosting purchase. Okay, so go ahead and then click that link. That's going to bring you to this page. And if you visit this page and the design is a little different, that's because it changes from time to time, right? So this Hostinger, let's go ahead and then check out some of the hosting web hosting packages that they have. And right here is their premium shared hosting. Okay, so for only $2.80 per month, you are going to have, or you are going to be able to host 100 websites. They give you 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, as you can see here, free weekly backups. They give you free domain name. How cool is that? For most of the hosting providers, you actually buy the domain name separately. Okay, here they give you a free domain name and a free email as well. So they give you a bunch of other stuff that are very cool and very helpful as well. Right, so this is a perfect deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and then click add to carts. And as I said, make sure you use the link in the description to get the best deal on Hostinger. All right, so this is very affordable. So I'm going to go ahead and then use the 48 months. Okay, and that's going to give me the best deal. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then enter my email. Right, so that's my email. I'm going to use PayPal. As you can see, my total is $133. Okay, now I have a coupon for you. Okay, and this is the best coupon on Hostinger. Go ahead and enter the coupon code EGATOR. Okay, that's right here. Enter that and apply and see what you get. You get 10% discount. So that is a very cool deal, and this is a very reliable hosting. That is why I went ahead and then got you this very important deal. All right, so we are going to go ahead and submit our secure payment. All right, so after the payment, make sure you check out your email to finish up everything, confirm your email and all that. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then log in. So right here, I just logged in and I'm going to go ahead. As I said, they give you a free domain name, so you can go ahead and then claim the domain. Okay, which is really cool. On most platforms or with most hosting providers, you actually have to buy the domain name separately, which will cost you probably $10 or more, right? So the domain name I'm going to buy is dummy EGATOR, and I'm going to use the .com. Okay, so let me quickly check if this is actually available, and it is. Okay, so let's go ahead. As you can see here, that would cost me $14, but here they are giving it for me. They're giving it to me for free, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and then claim this domain name. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but they give us a free SSL as well. So let's go ahead and install that. Yep. And that's installing. And that's going to make sure every traffic on the website is secure. All right, the build is done. And so when we come back to our project, we should have this build folder here. Okay, I'm actually going to compress that, and this zip file, this new zip file is what we are going to upload to Hostinger. Okay, so let's actually come to Hostinger and log in. Business web hosting, I'm going to go to manage here, and you should have your domain. That's the domain you claimed for free. You should have that selected by default, but I've chosen this, and that's because I'm using the other one. That's the one I claimed. I'm using it for something else. Okay, so you should have yours selected by default, and it's going to work just fine. Okay, it's the same thing. All right, so let's go to file manager. Let's go to public, and I'm actually going to remove everything from here. If you have anything here, make sure you empty it. Empty this public_HTML folder. All right, so let's go and upload the zip file, that is the build that's in the client, and the build.zip. That's what we are going to upload. Boom, that's done. I'm going to unzip it. So I'll extract it right here in this folder. And so I can go ahead and remove the zip. We don't need it. I'll enter the build. I'll copy everything and then move it into the main folder. So basically I'm going back one folder. Okay, and now I can go ahead and delete the build. We basically moved everything in the build folder here in the public underscore HTML folder. Okay, so that is the deployment process for the front end as well. All right, so now if I should go to the domain that I just deployed this to, let's see what happens. So I'll just paste and let's see, boom, we have it. Okay, but now I'll try and then log in as one of the signed up users. This is actually the admin, and I'm not going to get any feedback because remember, we have to come back to the index.js of the server side, and in the course we should go ahead and add the new URL for our client side. Okay, the client domain that needs to communicate with the API. I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, the client side will not be able to communicate, or will not be allowed to communicate with this API. Okay, so let's copy the URL, that's the domain you claimed and deployed the React application on. Copy that domain and paste it in here in this array, add it to the array. Okay, so go ahead, save that, and make sure you go ahead and let's add that and commit. I'll say new client URL added to course. Okay, all right, so now we can push it to our repo. Okay, so we have new client URL added, so that should be updated here as well. Our server should be updated. So now if I come back and refresh, and I'm going to go ahead and enter the same credentials and try logging in, let's see what happens. And boom, we are actually logged in, guys. So now this deployed React application is actually communicating with our deployed backend or our deployed API. That's the Node Express API. So this is how you deploy a MERN stack application using the continuous deployment method. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.